Good afternoon, families. My name is Heather Deere, the Assistant Director of Parent and Family Programs at William & Mary. I am happy to welcome you to our family webinar series. Our webinar series is designed to provide you with information about the student experience and opportunities your student may take advantage of. We have an extra special session in store for you today. Joining us to discuss her recent read, Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World, is the 28th President of William & Mary, Catherine Rowe. Before I turn the mic over to President Rowe, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes. First, we will save all questions for the end of our session. You can submit questions by commenting on this stream. I will serve as the moderator and ask our presenter as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. Second, if you need to step away from the stream or want to rewatch later, this stream will be recorded and posted on our website briefly after we finish today. At this time, I would like to introduce our special guest. Catherine Rowe, a nationally recognized leader in digital innovation of the liberal arts, became the 28th President of William & Mary in 2018. Rowe previously served as Provost and Dean of Faculty of Smith College in Massachusetts, following a faculty position at Bryn Mawr and Yale. She is also the co-founder and former CEO of Luminary Digital Media, which developed a series of educational apps enhancing student engagement and learning of classic Shakespearean texts. President Rowe earned a bachelor's degree in English and American Literature from Carleton College and a master's and PhD in English and American Literature from Harvard. She has completed graduate work in cinema and media studies at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. At William & Mary, Rowe has launched a series of generative discussions called Thinking Forward to inform the university's strategic planning process, which is currently underway. One of the hallmarks of her leadership are listening to and engaging the university community, and we look forward to being part of that during our conversation today. Welcome, President Rowe.
Thank you, Heather, and welcome, hello, to all the parents and families who are joining us today. I'm excited for our discussion because David Epstein's Range is a book that I've been recommending to everybody that I meet, and this is the first time I've had a chance to really dig into it and talk about it in a sustained way. So I'll say a few things about why I think it's so important right now for the early 21st century for William & Mary in specific, and how it connects to what we're doing right now at William & Mary, what's drawn me here to this university. And then I hope we'll have a lot of time for Q&A going forward. I want to just say a few words about how I'm speaking to you and who I'm imagining I'm speaking to as I look into the camera. I know there are parents and family members out there, I imagine maybe siblings, grandparents, friends of William & Mary, folks who are interested in how undergraduate liberal arts and sciences connects to future careers, lives as citizens. Those are my interests as well. I'm bringing to this book and to the work that I do a lot of different identities as an administrator and leader, as a teacher, as a parent myself, whose own kids just recently went through their undergraduate experiences and are contemplating graduate school or in their first and second jobs right now. So I think I'll start with what caught me about this book, which was the review in Forbes that you have all read, and a sentence in it about academic specialization. The fact that William & Mary is so committed to a broad undergraduate liberal arts and sciences curriculum, and that our core curriculum, recently designed, emphasizes range and breadth, was a real attraction for me. And when I read this review, I thought, this is a book that's going to talk to me about why that range matters so much and what its power is. I read it with a great delight. It's a fun book. That's not always true of popular nonfiction, and my standards are high. But it's a really enjoyable book to read, and at its core is a problem statement that I think is really quite powerful for right now. So I'm going to read that to you. It's on page 53. You can see my bookmark is a basketball ticket for a recent game. So this is the chapter, How the Wicked World Was Made. Wicked here means highly complex and full of novel challenges. And Epstein writes, like chess masters and firefighters, pre-modern villagers, not who we are now, relied on things being the same tomorrow as they were yesterday. They were extremely well prepared for what they had experienced before and extremely poorly equipped for everything else. Then lower in the paragraph, that is not an option for us. The more constrained and repetitive a challenge, the more likely it will be to be automated. While great rewards will accrue to those who can take conceptual knowledge from one problem or domain and apply it in an entirely new one, the ability to apply knowledge broadly comes from broad training. So breadth of training, he says elsewhere, predicts breadth of transfer of one conceptual framework into another conceptual framework, which is for him the distinguishing feature of range, the Roger Federer model of learning. We know from so many studies by McKinsey, Korn Ferry, Deloitte, that the success, competition in any region and any industry, in any community is going to depend on the multiplicity of skills and the ability to navigate rapid change. So we're at a moment when in every field and in every community, the challenges and opportunities coming our way are largely novel ones. That's true for universities as well. And that pace of change is not likely to slow. Recent McKinsey study predicted that 50% of the jobs that our graduates are graduating into will be gone, and another new 50% will have emerged in the next 10 years. And a wonderful and challenging article in the Wall Street Journal recently in December was talking about the proliferation of jobs for complex problem solvers and the diminishing of jobs very rapidly that are routine and rote. So I see range as explaining what are the capacities that are needed to navigate such rapid change in a really clear way. And to me, those are the capacities, thankfully, for all of you and for me, that a liberal arts and sciences degree, an undergraduate degree, is most equipped to prepare, and William & Mary in particular. I was drawn here in part, as I said, because of the range of our curriculum. I've found here students who are thrillingly interested in multidimensional learning. So as you may know, we have among the highest numbers of dual majors and major minors of any public institution in the country. And those major minor patterns are about stretching the learning experience. So it might be finance and classics, for example. How do we think about value? This is a senior from last year who told me, I'm a finance and a classics major because I'm interested in different ways of thinking about value over time, values change of cultures, and in systems, the value systems of finance. So we're, I think, at a moment, in my career anyways, we're making the case for a liberal arts and sciences education is easier than it has ever been because of that rapid pace of change. That's good news for parents, that's good news for graduates, that our students are the ones that are prepared to be tech savvy, nimble about data, have fantastic communication skills in writing and speaking. They're able to collaborate with each other. That's a core part of what we teach here. They are entrepreneurial in the sense that they can think around the corner, and we're cultivating their resilience to take risks, which is also going to be really important in a rapidly changing world. They are complex and adaptable problem solvers. I'll give you two examples about how we've developed those capacities here at William & Mary that are quite distinctive at this university. The first is how long, for how many centuries, we have focused on innovation. We know William & Mary is a place that's rich in traditions, which as a Shakespeare scholar I love. It's also a place that's rich in a history of innovation, which as an entrepreneur was incredibly attractive to me. We just opened, as some of you know, our new entrepreneurship hub on Richmond Road in Tribe Square. Over 40% of the students participating, more than 300 of them, are women. We're attracting people who are not typically attracted to thinking in an entrepreneurial way. And over 50% of the students participating in our programs there are not business majors. They're not affiliated with a business school in any way, 26 different majors. What they are learning is the same thing that graduates like Mike Tomlin, Sean McDermott, Jill Ellis, Beth Comstock, founder of Hulu, Ellen Stofan, former chief scientist at NASA and now the chief of the Air and Space Museum at the Smithsonian. they're learning the qualities of risk-taking and disciplined experimentation and resilience that our earlier graduates had. So we're thinking very systematically about how do we grow those capacities for entrepreneurial, or that mindset of an entrepreneur, not necessarily the ability to build a business, but the ability to bring adaptability and thinking around the corner into every field and every curriculum. The second example I want to give is a really more focused one, but it's so exciting to me, and I think wonderfully exemplifies how counterintuitive and creative the thinking of our students is. And that is the team that participated in IGEM, and the IGEM competition 6 years in a row now. That competition is a worldwide competition. It's a group of scientists, students. It's all student run. IGEM stands for International Genetically Engineered Machines. It's the world's largest synthetic biology competition, and what that means is building machines with cells. So our team this year, our team has medaled every year. We took on the silver medal in 2019, and to put that in context, powerhouses, engineering giants like Penn and Purdue, Michigan and Stanford all earned bronze. I'm a little competitive, so I like that. And here's the project that they took. They took the material called biofilms. If any of you is familiar with mechanical engineering and materials engineering, you'll know that biofilms are the bane of every machine. It's the gunk that grows on every surface. They're very sticky, they grow really rapidly, they're incredibly durable. The gunk in your shower or your faucet is a good example, and they make things break. Our team flipped the story and said, if biofilms are so ubiquitous, how can we use those powers of stickiness, durability, and rapid growth? And how can we program them? So they developed a capacity to program biofilms, to grow them in shapes and to grow them across surfaces that will be the beginning of a new way of thinking about how to use this bane and turn it into an asset in materials engineering. So the question that I'm always thinking about is why do we do so well in things like that at William & Mary? Why are we so successful in that competition, to take one example? And the answer is that's a competition that foregrounds interdisciplinarity, collaboration, thinking outside the box, flipping a picture from this is a negative phenomenon to how can I use its durability, and tackling novel challenges. The teams ultimately that are successful are the ones that come up with entirely novel solutions for how you use biological materials and program them like machines. So that's what we have at William & Mary, a system, a curricular system, and a culture and a history that cultivates range. With that, I think I want to turn over the questions to Heather for Q&A, and let's get started talking. Thanks.
Thank you so much for those perspectives. I agree, when I was reading Range, it's really a unique and engaging read, especially this time of, I think, of college students and their journey through university and what that looks like after. So I think that's kind of a perspective that approached some of these questions which have been submitted beforehand. As William & Mary president and a mother, what do you think is the most important thing a young adult can learn while they're at university and in order to be an impactful citizen for the rest of their life?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. For me, it's about the most important thing. The most important thing is how to forge deep human connections, how important that capacity is. That's something that students are constantly growing at William & Mary, because it's a feature of our community that we care about enormously, and our undergraduates are really focused on that. They have it at front of mind. And the ability to work together with others, especially those who are really different than you are, to connect across interests and passions, to build relationships that will last a lifetime and be sources of solace and creativity, that's the most important thing. There are many other really important things, but I'll stop there.
I think that's fantastic advice. Another question we have, what do you say to potential parents and students who don't understand the value of a liberal arts education in a world increasingly focused on college as training for one specific job?
Well, So classically, liberal arts and sciences curricula have prepared students for the fourth, fifth, sixth job. And we do that incredibly effectively. I think that's one of the cases that Epstein is making in Range, that testing one's thinking across multiple methodologies and multiple arenas is what allows one to think abstractly, cultivates that skill, and then to begin to look at systems and apply knowledge from one place to another. That's one of the most important success factors in a world that's changing so rapidly, because it's not just that the answers to the questions coming our way are novel right now, new ones, but that the questions are often not known. I think I'd also add, it's increasingly important that we think about the first job, because landing in that first job is as important. Landing in a productive and generative first job is as important as preparing oneself for the fifth job. And I think that's new in the way that liberal arts universities have talked about our relationship to professional life. But I feel very strongly that it's a false opposition to think that we are preparing ourselves and our graduates for professional lives, and we're preparing them to be citizens, to be complex thinkers. Those are, in fact, mutually reinforcing success factors, and we need to always be thinking about both.
This leads me to my next question. How does a generalist student who is graduating and entering the workplace, how do they market themselves when hiring practices are leaning towards specialization?
I think hiring practices actually are tilting back. One of the things that I hear over and over from alumni and from employers, I don't know if this resonates with those of you on the webcast right now, but I'm curious about this. The first thing they say they're looking for in colleagues is adaptable technology skills. They want students to be tech savvy. They want them to understand basic structures like algorithms, have good stats capacities so they can look at large corpora of data, and to be able to acquire new technology skills very quickly. So everybody is aware that it's not a single platform. You might need Python now, but in 10 years it will be something else. So how quickly can you learn a new technology skill? The next thing that every business leader tells me is, I cannot get enough of people who write well. I just can't get enough of them. And that's the beginning of a conversation always about what it means to have a workforce, to have colleagues who have multidimensional skills. And so we talk a lot when we're preparing our students with how they can present that multidimensionality. So if you are a finance and a classics major, that's an asset that you have both of those qualities and skills and methodologies under your belt. How do you talk about that range? It's one of the reasons I'm recommending this book to everyone, because I think it gives us a recipe for that.
I would agree. Flipping the switch a little bit, to anyone who's on the webcast that might be an employer who's hiring young students graduating, how can employers foster innovation in their workplace?
I asked this question for about 3 years ago to a panel of alums from my prior institution at Google. And they had a really clear answer. They systematically ask in the annual reviews, in their monthly meetings with managers, they systematically ask, so what are the riskiest things you're doing? Looks like you've had a lot of successes here. Let's talk about whether you have enough failures. They're building resilience to failure and intentional and smart kinds of failure. Fail quickly, fail in a smart way, learn from it, reboot, and move forward. And that takes resilience. So when I asked that panel of alumni, what was it that is the key to resilience in this organization at Google? First she said, well, we allow ourselves to mourn what goes, what fails. We acknowledge it, we don't hide it. And then second of all, there's a culture of psychological safety where we can all talk in a sustained and formal way about what are the success factors and what got learned from a failure. We see this in athletics, we see it in the entrepreneurial world, and that culture of exploring what it means to test things out, to take risks, to experiment, and then learn from failure, that's something we need to bring into academics more broadly.
The introduction of the book mentioned a sampling period in someone's life where
Yes.
they develop a little bit of breadth versus depth. What does
Yes.
that look like in the life of a college student?
It's great. One of the wonderful books on undergraduate experience by Lee Cuba, talked about restarting. That over and over in the life of a college student, that student is restarting. They are restarting their friendship community. They're restarting their relationships of folks they live with. They're testing out new curricula, potential career pathways, and an internship. So the period of sampling is one of learning what it's like to start something new, testing it out, and then adding an additional new mode to a new arrow to your quiver if you want. Epstein says, what was the age? Many of the athletes that in the studies that he looked at didn't start specializing until after they were 22. So we're talking about Olympic athletes, folks who are winning the World Cup. That's about the right age of young adulthood, just about graduating from college, where we would begin to start to see some honing down from that sampling period. Liberal arts and sciences curricula systematically push students to sample and to stretch themselves.
Along that vein, a parent has asked, what advice would you give a freshman trying to figure out their major?
Try things and embrace the instability. It's my mantra. Learning is about instability, and it doesn't always feel good to be unstable. But if you can recognize that feeling, embrace it, and allow yourself not just to push always for balance, but welcome the wobble, then you're going to learn more. You'll be less anxious. You'll be more open.
I think that's wonderful advice. We're curious, how did your path follow or not follow the philosophy presented in Range?
This is a book that feels like it was written for me. I think many of you have heard me, if you've heard me speak, talk about how unusual William and Mary is in that the different parts of my life, which have been separate for so long, come together here so well and so easily. There aren't a lot of Shakespeare scholars in the world who are also rabid sports fans, athletes, coaches. There aren't a lot of them who are also entrepreneurs. The world of entrepreneurs is not filled with Shakespeare scholars, people who love to read literature. And coming to William and Mary, I have learned that what I was doing was cross-training for the sport of being president of this amazing institution, where range is something that is a feature of everything that we do, and where we embrace that multidimensionality.
I have an interesting question here. In the chapter 9, it mentioned Hamilton and its success and how Lin-Manuel Miranda thought innovatively about its creation. How do you think innovation and breadth affected its vast success?
Well, it's really clear in this book, I mean, that's a wonderful example, that there is a link between breadth and innovation, that the connections that allow you to see, I can make a popular musical about a moment in history that we haven't been talking about, the excitement of that moment in history, the sense of connection it might have now, and also the musical and performance modes that will create that sense of connection. That there's a really strong linkage between the ability to innovate and the ability to take one concept from one domain into some other domain. And that's, I think, the key. That's why it's such a wonderful example in that chapter.
Do you think there are any questions that we should be asking as parents that haven't been brought up yet in our webcast?
I would say, here's a really fun one. Ask your children, what are the connections that they're discovering between different parts of their life as college students, between different classes, maybe between extracurricular activities and their classes, between those activities. Systematically ask them to make those linkages, and then ask them also what's different. Where do they notice divergence as well as convergence, or threads that carry through? It's a wonderful topic of conversation. It's a great one for discovering where they're at and for affirming that sense of synthetic connection and evolution and sampling is what they should be doing right now, and it's going to be a success factor in the rest of their lives as citizens and as professionals.
And President Rowe, if you have any last thoughts about range and any advice that you'd like to give our families who are communicating with their students through this journey of their sampling period, essentially.
Yes, welcome the instability. Let them know you welcome it. One of the wonderful things about this book, too, is the way it speaks to adults at moments when we are constantly learning, and that's going to increasingly be true for adults. So you might give them examples of instability and learning and sampling in your own life and where you see connections. I talk a lot, for example, about the connection between being a mom and being an administrator, and that I imported my playdate rule from my life as a parent, hosting events at my house, visiting other people's house with my toddlers. I imported that rule to committee meetings. The playdate rule, as many of you know, is you always stop the playdate before everybody's tired and cranky while they're still having fun. And it's a great recipe for a successful committee meeting when people still have energy leaving the meeting for the work that's to come.
Thank you, President Rowe, for spending time with us today and sharing your perspectives on range, and thank you for introducing us to this wonderful resource.
Enjoy it, keep reading, and it was lovely to have some time with you. Thank you.